So you just finished up your ride, there's a noise, there's some sort of creak, a rattle, a scrape, don't know what it is? Watch this video to find out. Today we're going to be doing this on the Norco Optic C2 in the blue and gold colorway. And you can skip to any of these timestamps here if you want to move around the video. Let's hop in. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is going to be your pedal. So before you start ripping apart your bearings or your bottom bracket, we're going to look at the pedal to just see if that could be your source of the problem. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to kind of wiggle it, make sure there's no play. Obviously, this is a new bike, new pedals, there's no play, but hypothetically, yours would wiggle, maybe it's back and forth, up and down, something. But this one, no wiggle, so that's not the problem. The next thing it could be is maybe the grease inside of kind of where it threads in here, dried up. It's a little loose, it's caught just in a creak, so let's grease that up and get it all straightened out. So we're gonna grab our pedal wrench. This is another super useful tool, almost mandatory to have in your bike garage collection. So we're gonna take it here and just start unthreading it. Now, after that first kind of breaking the seal kind of a deal, it should come out relatively easy. If you have two hands, of course. All right, so now we're gonna unthread the pedal. And now we're gonna kind of just inspect the threads. Make sure there's no damage in them. You don't see any stripping. That's what you wanna look out for. And do the same kind of just on your pedal. Make sure it looks good. We look good. So now we're just gonna grease it up and then thread it back in. Just put a light little finger wrap around on it. That's it. Now let's install it back in the bike. So now we got the pedal all greased up. Now we're gonna thread it back in. You wanna make sure that if the bike came with any washers, it's on there. So we're gonna get it right to the spot here. We're gonna thread it towards the front of your bike. Make sure you're doing it. This should thread in pretty easy. If it's not going in easy, you're doing it wrong. Please make sure it goes in easy. So we're gonna just hand thread it, get a couple turns in there. Grab the pedal wrench, just finish it up. And again, you shouldn't be forcing this. It should be very smooth. If it doesn't feel easy, back it out, try again. That way you don't cross thread anything. Now once it's there, we're gonna just sink it. And kind of give it a good little torque down. Sweet, that's that. So let's say you hear a little noise coming from the front end of your bike. Something's just not tight, feels a little wiggly. Maybe you hear like a clunk noise when you try to turn over a bump. It's a good chance it could be your headset. So we're gonna kind of hop into this and just show you how to grease it, tighten it, make sure it's all right, because that could solve your problem. So we're gonna use a little three-way here. It's got 3 different size Allens. They're really great to have in your arsenal. First thing we're gonna do is just loosen up the stem bolts. Make sure you do that first. And you know it's loose enough when you can kind of turn the bars with the wheel not moving in the same direction. And then now we loosen that tensioning bolt. So we're going to take it all the way out. And make sure you keep track of what orders your spacers come in, because that'll be important when you want to put it all back together. Make sure you have it at the right height. And we're going to slide this off. Just kind of lay that at the side of the bike. Pull those spacers off. Make sure you keep them in the right order. And now we're going to remove this dust cover down here. And again, make sure you keep everything in the right order. Lastly, we're just going to kind of pull off this kind of race. It's what keeps your bearing aligned on the steer tube. It's very important. So make sure you don't remove it rough. Make sure you're gentle with it, because any damage could cause a failure in the future. So now we got the bearings all opened up. We got the steer tube here. We kind of just want to take a visual inspection. Make sure there's no sand, grit, whatever. So you want to run your finger through it, make sure it's all good. Take a rag, kind of just go in, clean it up, make sure there's any grit. There's nothing in there, so there's nothing really on this guy. Pull up on the frame to reveal the bottom. Just kind of clean it, make sure there's no grit, sand, anything like that, because it can work its way in there and just cause that little creak. Then we're going to take some grease here. This is just kind of your general grease. It's wheel and bearing grease by Park Tool. This is, again, one of those things you need to have in your garage if you want to start biking. You're just going to take a little bit here. make sure you just coat that bearing and the steerer tube. So just a little bit goes a long way. You know, just kind of wrap it around in there. Wrap the steerer tube. Any point of contact is what you want to do. And you want to make sure that that bearing is able to move inside as well, so it's still freed up. Then we're going to go do the same thing for the bottom. Take your little applicator, a little bit of grease. Spread it around on your finger, somewhat graciously, you know, a little bit. And like I said, a little bit goes a long way. That's that. So now we're going to set it back. Make sure it's all aligned. Pop your bearing back in. Now we're going to put everything back together. First thing goes back in. It's going to be that little race to align it. Pop that in. And if everything doesn't align perfect at first, it will once you put tension on it. So don't be worried about if the race isn't perfectly in yet or something like that. Next is going to go your dust cover on most bikes. Slide that guy down there. Make sure it's a little freed up. Now, this is where remembering your spacers is important. So we're going to just put our spacers back on. You can even put a little bit of grease on these guys because that could also just be that little weird thing that's causing grease, you know, and since we got it opened up, might as well. So make sure those are all greased up. Throw it on. Now is going to go your stem. There you go. Make sure the stem is on. And now when you end, you want to make sure that the stem is above the fork kind of tube. So if there's no gap, then that's where you need the spacer. So on ours, we're going to put an extra spacer on the top. So that creates that gap, so tension will happen. Next, we're going to kind of just put the top tensioning bolt in there, finger tight. Then that's when you want to just come in. And it's important that you tension this before you tighten this clamp. Otherwise, you can mess up your star nut if you tighten this first and then this. So now we're going to tighten it back up. Kind of make sure everything feels good. Check to make sure there's no play. We got no play. Did a good job. Now we're just going to kind of align the handlebars here. Looks pretty straight. We're just going to kind of tighten them down. And then go back over them. Make sure they are torqued. Because you don't want that sliding around when you're hitting a corner or doing something, you know. You want to make sure those are pretty torqued down. Perfect. Check the last one. That's that. Make sure you give it a little wiggle, a little turn, and make sure you tighten everything up. And then wipe any of the excess grease you could have gotten on the frame, just so it looks good and no dirt sticks to it and draws a little more attention to it. So make sure you wipe it all down, take off the excess. And now you know your headset's good to go. All right, so you finish up your ride and you hear a scraping coming from the front end, something like that. No bueno. So what's happening there is your caliper is not aligned, so that's actually your pad hitting the rotor, causing that little scraping noise. So this is how you're gonna fix it. And you're gonna stop it, and then you're gonna come around here and identify these two bolts here, and then you're gonna loosen them. Just like that. Should only take a turn or two. All right, and then you're gonna check it with the wiggle, make sure you got play in it. We do, sweet. So now you're gonna come back, spin that wheel hard, make sure it's still scraping. You're gonna slam that lever, lock that wheel up, and this should give you a rough idea of kind of where the center point is. You're gonna tighten that back up. Torque them down, then you're good to go. The next noise that could be coming is a little creak kind of sound from your seat. And that could just be caused by a loose bolt. It sounds like that. Super subtle. So what you want to do is just back your screws out, just in case there's anything in the threads. Do that to both of them here. And then once you kind of got that play, get it lined up to the rails that you want. There's a little guide on each side of the rails. Once you got it set where you want it, just torque that back down. Nice and tight. Make sure you try to keep it at the angle you want. And this might take a couple more turns than you think it might need, but it's important you get it locked in. Now that we got that torque down, no noise. Good to go. All right, next thing we're gonna look is at the back wheel. So what we're gonna be doing now is we're gonna be greasing the axle, because if the axle got dry, it could be causing the noise. And we're also, a little pro tip, we're gonna grease in between where the wheel mates with the frame. Because if a little sand, a little grit, something a little dry, that could also be what's causing the noise. So now we're just gonna remove the back wheel, Some of yours might come with a handle. You can use that. This one doesn't, so we're going to just use our Allen here. Back it out. Then we're going to lock out our derailleur hanger. Lock the derailleur out. Just remove that axle. Pull your derailleur back. Drop that wheel right out. Now we're going to grease this surface here, just with the same grease we've been using, that Park Tool grease. Now we're going to grease this other side right here, just a little bit on that mating surface. Now we're going to grease that axle up. Alrighty, sweet. So now we got it all greased up. We greased up our little spots here, the contact points. Greased up in here too. Let's get the wheel back in. Throw that in there. Slide it up, just like that. Line it up. Find the threads. We're going to thread that bad boy right in. Sweet. And again, make sure it's snug. Don't over tighten it, but you know, you want it to be tight. It's your wheel. And then make sure you release that. No noise. Sweet. So that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Maybe you'll be able to save a couple bucks, but if none of these kind of solutions fixed your noise, I'm sure bring it into your local bike shop. And if you're in the local Wilmington area, we'd love to help you out here at Blue Clay Bikes. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or you want to see something in a future video, make sure you put it in there in the comments. Peace.